On this episode of the John 1911 podcast, Harvard gets bent, Alec Baldwin exonerated, Rommel barracks, and don't shoot the pool boy.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This is Danny, Kraken, and Marky, and this is episode 308 of the John 1911 podcast. Today is, what is today's date? This is June 30th, Friday night, and we have the band completely together to do a three-way, and I am in hiding because in Cincinnati we have been overrun by the Taylor Swift army, and we have 120,000 13-year-old girls in the city over the next 2 days, and everybody's trying to stay off the highways and out of the city. So I figured we'd get on here and have adult conversations.
We had it last week.
Oh, was she up there last week?
Yes, and it was more like about 140 or 150,000, and it was absolutely insane. You know, of course, the vendors and the hotels and everybody else, you know, they made bank. I mean, everything was raised. It was just, it was insane. It's like the Super Bowl coming to town.
You know, I think, you know, because I'm old and...
No, you're not.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, on this podcast, I'm the young buck, but you know, like I just recently kind of appreciated like how big of a star Taylor Swift is. Like it's like normally to me she's just a name of all these other names of people I barely even know who they are. I didn't really appreciate that she was like this mega star until I heard there were 120,000. You know, and here's the thing: it's like it's all little girls.
Yep,
right?
They're
Like,
called.
I mean,
Do you know what their fans' nicknames are? They're called Swifties.
I think I've heard. Yeah, I have heard that. So,
I have all their albums.
okay.
I don't know if I'd admit that in public.
Yeah.
No. You know I'm kidding.
Hey, keep it up. Your face is going to be on a beer can, and Kid Rock's going to be shooting a machine gun at you.
Yeah.
So,
I think I'll get Danny the box set of Lady Gaga for Christmas.
Well, that's fine.
That ought to fit right in his collection there.
As long as she's playing the piano with it one leg up on the keys, I don't care.
Hey, I like Lady Gaga.
This is already going downhill. This is going to be a three-fisted monkey.
Trust me, Kraken. This roller coaster is one speed and one speed only. Downhill fast.
So here's a pop culture reference since we're three old guys. No, I'm sure most of the audience has never seen the movie Towering Inferno. So that's us.
Yes. Well, let's get on to politics. I mean, I've been glued to the TV set since SCOTUS has made their announcements the last 2 days, and I, for one, am happy the way they're doing things.
Well, I mean, so Kraken, how is Fox News covering things right now? Are they all like doing victory laps, or are they you know somberly talking about the watershed decisions?
A little of both. There's some ball spiking going on. They're bringing in all the talking heads, of course. But mostly, you know, they're talking about how the Constitution's being upheld and how it's the decisions that have come out today are kind of common sense decisions that probably shouldn't even have needed to get to the Supreme Court.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, you know, Congress is the power of the purse. Joe Biden doesn't have the authority. I just heard, because I've been busy today, but I just heard that did John Roberts in the school voucher, the school loan, what they call that?
He wrote the majority opinion, if that's what you're asking.
What is it called? Like when the government basically pays for your schooling?
Loan
It's
forgiveness program.
yeah, or yeah, like the student loan, probably the student loan program. So,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, those of us who worked, um, you know, I guess he cited Nancy Pelosi in his decision.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he did.
It's, you know, it's
Yes, he
like,
did.
He
Yes, he
did
uh,
did.
when Biden was running for election, uh, and started making the promise that he was going to bail out student loans. She poked up, and actually, I think she probably took it as a challenge to her power as speaker, because it basically was no, 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 that's my job, not yours. So yeah, he did quote her.
well, good. You know, I mean, that's the ultimate power that Congress. The reason our government is set up this way is like we have, you know, like it's funny the libs, you know, like you know, separate but equal. They're all you know, when Donald Trump's president, it's you know, it's not just about the executive branch and the president. Congress is a separate but equal branch, and the Supreme Court is a separate but equal branch. And suddenly it's like, yeah, well, the mechanism that Congress, the number one mechanism that Congress has to check the power of the other two branches is the power of the purse.
Correct.
I mean, ultimately, it's what it comes. I mean, like, you know, ultimately, like, just keep this in mind. Anytime you hear a story about Congress pulling people in to testify from the FBI or the IRS or from the State Department or from the Defense Department or any group or anything where they're not cooperating with oversight or they don't want to turn over documents or they don't want to do this and they don't want to do that. And it's like we're going to hold you in contempt and we're, you know, whatever. And it's like all of this is kind of a dog and pony show because if Congress was really serious, all they have to do is shut off your money. Then your ass will be in there talking. You know, oh, FBI doesn't want to give us the documents on Joe Biden. The FBI just ran out of money.
Yeah.
You know, and see, you know, that's part of the political game they play. You know, and no one's really serious about any of this stuff. It's all bullshit.
Well, here's the thing. There are three separate but equal powers in government, albeit with the Supreme Court always having the final say. I mean, that's just how our forefathers set it up. And what Biden did, I mean, let's get back to
But
a
well, the
couple.
Supreme Court. Well, hold on. The Supreme Court does not have the final say because the check on the power of the Supreme Court is the ability of to pass a constitutional amendment.
Right, right. But I mean, okay, all right, Mr. Semantic. But
And the Senate confirms, advises, and consents to confirm Supreme Court justices.
right, it's like a
And
vicious circle.
Congress pays for the budget for the Supreme Court.
Well, we could keep getting into hundreds of different nuances, but
It's
let's
not a nuance. It's
well,
like
for the sake of argument,
okay.
it pretty much the buck stops with the Supreme Court when they rule on yes or no, if it's a law, if it's not, if it's even, applicable, whatever it is. But my point that I want to bring up is that there was something, I believe television said something like $1.7 trillion in student loans out. All right. Now, if Biden just thinks he could wave his hand and say, here's all the forgiveness, well, we all know that he can't. But my point being is that Biden used this as a political tool to capture all those voters.
Yeah,
Now they're saying
it's the bread and circus theory
exactly.
of political
And,
science.
right. And now a lot of these young people are starting to turn on Biden. I've seen a few interviews today saying he led us down the garden path, full
Well,
well
you know,
knowing that this would be overturned.
The Democrats and in some sense the Republicans do that too. So, but like, okay, like look at what's going on with, and it hasn't gotten a lot of press, but it just started finally blowing up because this was going to run off a cliff. They're having the reparations
Oh, yeah.
conversations in California of all places. And it's
Actually,
like,
there's a town in Illinois that already gave some reparations.
yeah, and it's like, well, but like, this idea, like, if you should see these reparations things in California, because it's like, we're gonna, it was, they should get this or they should get that, and suddenly it's turning into everybody should get $500,000 or $1.2 million, and it's turning into billions and billions. California's broke. It's like, well, they want the federal government to pay for this. And it's like they're telling all these people that are like showing up at these events and they're all excited and it's like, oh my God, we're like, our money's so close, like we can get some money. And then it's never going to happen. And, reparations were paid in the forms of musket balls
Yes,
and,
they were.
blood on the battlefield. And this idea that, and it's making these promises to these people, shit that's never going to happen because there's no money. There's no money to do it, and now they're all raging and exploding out there in California. All these people that that were arguing for these reparations. Like there's a few individuals you see where like they're like the talking heads, the titular leaders of these groups because like they have power now because they're on TV and they're always sticking the camera. What do you you're the leader of the reparations group, and so this person now is like, I'm leading the charge and people are following me, and this person's realizing I'm an asshole and I've got nothing to give. I can't deliver, and so now they want to tear the country apart. They're like, well, we want to have a national divorce. That was the one I heard the other day, and it was like, oh, that's interesting. California wants to leave America because of reparations. Well, you ain't never getting no money then because California doesn't have any money.
Well, if they want to secede, let them go. Bye. I have no
Well,
use for anybody or anything from California.
we're getting off on a tangent, but I'm going to say this. I disagree with that kind of talk.
Why?
California. Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you why.
I know you
Because
will.
there are what 40 million Americans that live in California, and the largest gun owning population in by state in the union are people that live in California, and it's like, okay, my argument is no. The commies can't have California. No, the crazies, the Maoists, and the Stalinists cannot have California. If anything, it's like we need to go in there and clean them out. If that's what it comes down to, I don't believe in secession of California. I believe in, oh, you're going to try to secede, huh? Well, guess we're all going to put on the blue hats, and I'm marching right back in there. And they can't have California. And like, oh, you're going to give up San Diego. Oh, they can have California, but you're going to give up San Diego Naval Base. You're going to give up San Francisco. You're going to give up the port of Long Beach. You're going to give up Vandenberg Air Force Base, where for missile defense. You're going to give up the Skunk Works, where all the stealth technology is coming out of. You're going to give up Silicon Valley. You're going to give up 40 million, 40 million Americans and millions and millions of constitution loving, law abiding gun owners that happen to be stuck living behind enemy lines. Dude, I don't want California to succeed. I'm ready to march up there and fucking do a rescue mission.
Well,
No.
I look at it this way. Unfortunately, California with L.A., Frisco, and their Fresno and their other big towns, because of they're the big population centers, those liberal-minded crazies control the rest of the normal thinking people out there because there's more population. That's how they elect the same, lunatics, back into all these different offices. But the point being is that unfortunately in California, you have the epicenter of liberalisms, but they far outnumber the normal people. That's why they win the elections. That's why they
Well,
have these reparations. That's why they have all this crazy stuff. It just it's
and
crazy
it's
how it's set up.
it's collapsing. And
Yes,
you
it
know what?
is.
Let them just collapse. And it's like, eventually that ship's going to roll over. And
Well, that's
California's
maybe
going
what
to
we're hoping for.
and California's going to have to start, electing politicians that actually tell the truth and actually, function, with some responsible governance in mind. And so
Yeah.
I don't want to give up California. Even like just the idea of giving up California to me, like that thinking, it's that internet gun forum meme thinking, fuck California. It's like, no, fuck you. How about let's go Operation California Freedom here.
See, here's the deal, though. I'm going to jump in real quick here. Here's the deal.
Please
That
do.
entire left coast is important to America, so we can't say fuck the left coast. We get so much produce, we get so much technology, we get so much lumber from the left coast. We just can't say fuck it and let them have it.
Mm-hmm.
There's that
Oh
old
yeah.
saying, as California goes, so goes the rest of the country.
Well, one thing, and this
But
isn't. Go ahead.
but we're starting to see that change because you look at Virginia, they got tired of some of the shenanigans and the people got out and vote. You look at some of the seats that were flipped in New York that were solid blue. People got tired of it and they got out and vote. And what's going to happen is more and more of that liberal crap on the coast will start filtering this way towards me until people get tired of it and start voting in blocks.
I would hope so, Kraken. I hope that you're correct in your summation of that. But as it is for now, though, on today's date, California is just they're off the tracks.
Well,
They're
sure they
they're
are.
they're off the tracks.
And you know what? California has the right to do that and reap what they sow, just like
Mhm.
Florida has the right to do what they want to do.
So
Did
let
Like
them
you?
all shoot up their dope, let them OD.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, and but you know what?
I hate government supplied Narcan. Let them shoot up. Get a bulldozer, push them off in the ocean. Pretty soon you run out of junkies and the street cleans up.
Well,
Let them reap what they sow.
but this is one of the things that, again, people make uninformed comments. And, you touched on this because you said the amount of produce that comes from California. You get a lot of people here in the Midwest, which is essentially where we all live. I mean, Kraken's kind of like almost to the west, but um, Great Plains. And, they're like, oh, yeah, all these big fucking cities, they'd be nowhere that we're going to get your food from. And it's like, people don't realize how much of a farming state California is.
Oh, it's
California
huge in
is a
agriculture.
huge, people just don't realize. They really have no appreciation because they think of California, they think of it's L.A. and they think of California and they think it's San Francisco, the inner city of San Francisco, and like there's so many more people and so many more things. I'm just not a big fan of the whole like fuck like okay, if you're gonna let them have California, you're gonna let them have New York. I mean, like you're New York City, Manhattan, you're gonna let them have that?
They have it
You like
now.
they oh no like this idea of like okay, like just logically speaking, this whole like California fuck them, let them secede thing. Okay, these commies, they can't fucking count. They can't add up 2 + 2 = 4. And so then they secede,
Literally.
and they're all it's going to be this little like Paris Commune murder fest, and they're going to run out of money. They're going to collapse, and guess what's going to happen? You think some outside country, probably China, could be Russia, but could be anybody, and be like, hey, we'll give you $5 billion a year if you let us put a big old naval base in San Francisco Harbor, or yeah, we'll give you all the free oil you need if you let us put a naval base down there in San Diego. And it's like all of a sudden now, people that talk in memes and be like, yeah, fuck them, let them go. Suddenly you don't realize what you've done. And it's like it's like people got to start telling the truth on both sides. When you hear crazy shit, be like, yeah, no. California never gets a secede in my book. I'll put on the blue hat and we're going in. I'm sorry, if those assholes try to secede, we're going in and we're arresting these people. And, we'll
Well,
Well, and
put them
it's
for
not a
treason.
self-sustaining model.
No.
The lifestyle of the cities in California And, take Seattle, take Portland. It's not a self-sustaining model, and we're starting to see it crumble now. So there's going to come a point where that type of society is going to completely crumble. And at that point, that's when other people are going to be able to hopefully take over and implement changes.
Well,
But you can't get change implemented until you hit rock. It's like being an alcoholic. An alcoholic's not going to change till they hit rock bottom. California is not going to change until they hit rock bottom.
so Kraken, do you remember? Because you law enforcement, do you remember when, um, like the 70s and the 80s, how bad it was in all these big cities?
Oh, horrible.
I mean, and the thing is, most people today under the age of 40, probably under the age of 50, really don't appreciate how bad it had gotten in America's cities. And this is what had led to the whole malaise in the 70s with, the oil shocks and the crime and how terrible the cities were, and then and then Reagan got elected in '80, and Shining City on the Hill, and and then there was Joe Biden, and he gets some of the credit, but there was a whole the crime bill. They started really cracking down on the drugs and the crime and putting people in prison, and then even in places like New York, a guy named Rudy Giuliani, who was a prosecutor, who made his bones going after the mob. He ran for mayor of New York, and Rudy Giuliani, before he had hair dye running down his temple, was the guy that made New York what it was in the 90s up until the mid 2010s. This super livable, valuable city, because he came in, he cleaned all that shit up. And what happens is you get all these young commies like AOC, and some, they think they're like, you can never run out of money, you can't ruin a good thing, you know. You just keep doing all this stuff, and they're wrecking all these cities again, and they're wrecking all these great places, and they're wrecking all these economic models. And I feel like it will swing back. I mean, some places will have to fail. Um, to teach other places to not fail. Like, here's a story that never gets covered. It never gets covered in national news, but it's worth mentioning. So, the business model of Florida is, it's got the weather, but then there's the retirees, and I think is there no estate tax in Florida, and then the way they handle like property taxes, because it brings in wealth. People will, as they start to get older and mass, and they want to keep what they have, and with the weather they'll go down there. West Virginia has not succeeded in doing this, but the current governor of West Virginia, Big Jimmy, he's been traveling around the state trying to convince people that he wants to switch to that kind of economic model where you can get all these people to come in from the Northeast and Boston and New England and New York and Pennsylvania and maybe Virginia and Ohio, and to come in and invest. Instead of going to Florida, they could park businesses or real estate or corporations, or whatever, in West Virginia as like a haven. And you're starting to see this competition among different states. So some states are going to win and some states are going to lose. The only thing you got to worry about is the corruption. Like Danny, you're in Illinois. It seems like no matter what happens in Illinois, like it's so corrupt
And we
that
hold the record for the most governors in jail. It's
I mean,
it's crazy. But to touch on your point, be it the governor of West Virginia and Texas has already experienced this, with the California transplants or whatever, and especially Florida with the New York people that have gone down there. The people that transplant there also bring their ideals with them and try to change the way of life of the of the people to to the state where they move into, and that's been a big clash also.
I think that's true on some level, but I think on many cases that's not true. I think, like you go to Florida and all these people from New York, are down there and they're like, don't bring that, all these people. I mean, you go to Florida and everybody sounds like they're from New York and New Jersey. Like they literally, that's the way they talk. And they're like, yeah,
Yes, they do.
don't bring that shit down here, and, you hear this, they address it, but you also have to realize too, like in, in Texas and in Tennessee, Austin has always been a liberal, crazy place.
Because of the
Houston has
college.
been, yeah, well, no, well, Houston has always been run. I mean, Houston's for a long time has been run by, these crazy liberal Democrats because, they're just big cities. Nashville has always been that way. Memphis has always been that way. And that has nothing to do with, you know, people moving from California. It's just that's the kind of the city the big city vibe that happens. Urban people tend to oversimplify how things work, and that's just a phenomenon that happens in these cities, and they
Yep.
ruin them.
Yep. So are we going to get a touch on the SCOTUS rulings at all?
I mean, I don't. I mean, I've got nothing to say. I mean, it's like
Well,
I don't know,
did
Kraken.
you? It started with yesterday. Yesterday, did you read the ruling from yesterday, which has it basically was a precursor to the student loan ruling today. They Did you read what happened yesterday, or do I need to inform you?
Well, I know. I want. Well, hold on. I know. Okay, I know about the student loan decision. I know about the free speech decision with the person in Colorado. I don't know if that
Right,
person is like a baker
right.
or whatever that person
The
was.
wedding website
The free,
designer.
yeah, the free speech decision, which is a legit decision. I know that there's the 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 affirmative action case with Harvard, which is soup. That's the one that interests me the most.
Me
But before
too.
we do that, so let me ask you guys something. So if you because I've been so with the I'm sure the libs have just been melting down today, like wanting to secede or whatever. Have any of them been talking about has court packing come back up yet? Are
Yep.
they gonna? Has
Oh
it?
yeah.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Every channel uh, out there, every talking head, Van Jones, you name it, they're all going crazy wanting to talk about packing the court, which becomes such a football in and of itself. It's not even funny.
Well, but you
But
know
you
what? It's that's just like reparations. They start making up shit that like
right.
this doesn't work this way. But then they're like they think they can do it, and they'll just start doing it, creating these
But
crises.
remember, Kraken, they also brought up the same issue right after the abortion ruling. We're going to pack the court, this or that, and that seemed to have died off. It's talking points for them. On something that the
Jo-
liberals don't
Joe
like.
Joe Biden, when he was running, actually was like open to the idea of packing the court, if I recall correctly. Then after he got in office, it was like let's just all settle down, and like it's okay, like so packing the court, like it's interesting because it's not clear in the Constitution doesn't even specify how many justices there should be on the Supreme Court. They settled on 9, so you couldn't have an even number. But I think at one point in the past it was 5. But it's like what power, like this like constitutionally this creates an interesting problem. So like let's say Biden goes, we're going to elect Marky from John 1911. We're going to put him up on the court because it's like, well, he's a Republican, he's a conservative, and or they'll probably try to do 2, but but they'll try to put me up because, well, look, if they can put me up, then they can put a commie up behind me. Okay, so anyway, they put me up, and then somehow in Congress, they get Congress to go, okay, yeah, we advise and consent. I go up to the court. Well, there's a process where the Chief Justice doesn't the Chief Justice swear in? Doesn't the Chief Justice swear in the new members of the court?
Yes, he does.
Yes.
And so that Chief Justice then seats those members. If the court doesn't seat members, doesn't seat me, I'm not on the court.
Correct. The Supreme Court could say, no, we're sticking at 9 and make a ruling
I
on
mean,
that.
yeah, they don't see ya. And it's like, okay, it's like then what are you going to do? It's like, well, okay, well, the next confirmation thing will be whatever. Well, so, I mean, anyway, but the Harvard thing I think is really interesting, but I want to give so I want to give actually some credit to where credit's due. AOC came out after the ruling on the Harvard affirmative action case, and I'd have to find it exactly, but basically her argument was, and it was something on Twitter. She said, like, old rich or rich white people, this is not about the fairness, because, and she said, X amount of students that are admitted into Harvard are legacies, which are mostly white. Do you guys know what legacies are?
Yes, I know
Yeah,
exactly
that's
what it
Dad
is.
graduated from Harvard, so
So I
you
get
know
it automatically.
automatically, and
Well,
when
you
I
That and a
get,
moved
yeah,
hundred
down to
thousand
I
dollar
Indiana,
donation.
automatically.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if you get it automatically, but you may get, it's like maybe a point system or preference, I'm sure, Bill Gates' daughter gets in a lot, gets more points than, say, my dad went to Harvard. But, the thing is, people on the internet and the conservatives, they went after AOC and said she was stupid because, like, this has nothing to do with this case, and these aren't the facts of the case, and this isn't this, and this isn't that. And it's like, yes, you're correct. However, AOC is 100% correct. The argument she's making doesn't need to be made to the courts. The argument she's making needs to be made to Harvard, because we have two situations here. If Harvard is going to be a merit-based system, you better accept the reality that in the country, and this is just the truth, you may have a situation where 15% of all the students that come into Harvard in an incoming class are white, and everyone else is Asian or Indian or black, and black, but mostly Asian and Indian. And it's because of they tend to do a lot better on the metrics to get into the school merit wise. And so in a world where, like this idea, it's like, if you're going to be 100% merit based, you better accept the reality that white people going to Harvard they're probably going to be a minority. And I am okay with that as long as it's merit based. But then the argument is, well, wait a minute. If, if little Johnny's dad is a billionaire and wants to buy a library for Harvard, shouldn't he be able to buy a library, donate money to the school, and the school can give him preferential treatment, like rewarding? Like, they're not going to turn down the kid, they're not going to turn down the son of the person that they, build the new wing for. And it's like, okay, that's an interesting argument, but AOC has a point, because number one, most people that go to Harvard don't pay. Maybe the legacies pay. I'm not entirely certain of that. The legacies might pay, but I happen to know that Harvard's endowment is so large that they have their endowment, I mean, it's in the many billions of dollars. And that endowment is invested and managed, and the profits from that pay for the kids to go to the schools. My understanding is most people who go to Harvard don't actually pay shit to go to school there.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, well, then it should be merit based, because if it's about giving these kids a free ride, you're going to very quickly have a situation where it's going to be Chinese kids, Asian kids, and Indian kids, and maybe some whites. And you're going to have to be okay with that. And I'm okay with it. But AOC is right. She's 100% right about this legacy thing. And and all these, I'm sure these people talking about packing the court, they're talking about affirmative action and the Civil Rights Act, and it's like, well, wait a minute. The people that are being discriminated against going into Harvard in this case, named in the case, are all Asian kids. It's not black kids being hurt going to Harvard. It isn't white kids not getting in. It's they're slamming down the Asian kids. There's too many Asians that are meeting the bar, and so they're letting in kids with lower objective scoring metrics that are not Asian. The only difference is they're not Asian, and that's what they got crushed on. And what I'm certain that all the libs don't want to say, as far as this ruling is concerned, is the Civil Rights Act, that was passed in the '60s specifically says you cannot discriminate these kinds of decisions based off of race. And I think there's something in the 14th Amendment too. But you're going to see all these liberal people talking about how they're setting black people back, the white supremacists or whatever. But this ruling by the Supreme Court is using the Civil Rights Act law as the basis for its decision.
Well, and I think that's part of what the problem is right now, is when we talk about minorities and the liberals get involved, minority has become a catch-all to mean black.
I agree.
So, just like you said, the whole crux to this case was that Asians with higher metrics were not getting into Harvard because affirmative action kicked in, and people of
They got in because
color,
they were the wrong. They weren't getting in because they were the wrong color.
yeah, they were the wrong shade of people of color, but they're not they're
Mm-hmm.
not they're not talking about that. They're talking about old crusty white people with lots of money, and that has absolutely nothing to do with it, because I saw a breakdown, and this is just off the top of my head, so my numbers are a little off. I apologize. But 55% of the student makeup at Harvard is minorities. Out of that, if all the metrics are equal, Asians only represented 5% of that. Blacks had like 42%. So,
Blacks are 13% of the population.
and the rest of the minorities, the Indians, Hispanics, got the crumbs of what was left.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take the all metrics are equal clause out of that and just start looking at merit-based qualifications, the Asians are getting stomped all over. Well, what the liberals forget when they start screaming is Asians are a minority community also. Indians are a minority community also. Hispanics are a minority community. So they're not showing love for minorities. They're not advocating for minorities. They are advocating for blacks. They're pandering for votes.
Well, and they don't even want to say that. They just want us to talk about the Civil Rights Act. And the reason they don't, and this is where they don't, it's interesting. So you make an argument like, okay, why are immigrant families, first generation immigrant families, whether they're from Vietnam or China or India or, wherever, Okay. First generation immigrant families, why are their kids doing so well? Well, it's because in most cases, specifically the Asian culture and Indian culture, and it used to be true in other culture in Europe, but it's not so true anymore, was the family unit. Is they come together as if they immigrate as a family, they come together as a family, they start a business, whether it's you know, a convenience store or a gas station or a car wash or whatever business it is. They all work together, they live together. It's a family unit. And in America, when you're an immigrant, you have two paths to success in America. When you come here, whether you get off the plane with no money or however you end up, you get here. You can either work or get an education. And when you have a family structure that enforces discipline of work and discipline of education, these people become successful in America time and time and time and time again. Certain groups are not as successful, and if you look at the culture of those groups, their family structure is non-existent, and that's
Well,
the problem. But
I
Yep.
that's why no one wants to go there.
I agree a lot with that, Marky, because my grandparents fled Germany in the 30s when Hitler was rising. They came here with nothing as immigrants. And now you know me and my son, and we're all doing very, very well. And we still enforce that of family unity. We really do.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with
Mm-hmm.
that. I mean, I'm a direct
Mm-hmm.
product of it.
Well, okay, we could even go even farther. We can go even farther and see again, like MSNBC doesn't want to talk about this. But if you look, America isn't perfect. But my argument would be the union is perfect, the people are not. And I understand that, um, I understand that a lot of people buy in this trope that America is broken. But, America was not created by old white guys. America was created by very young and smart people. Like they weren't old, they were young and they were smart and they had thought about these issues. And what they don't want to talk about is if you look at, I guess I'll say just for this conversation, the black community in America, their levels of success in society from 1865 migrating up through the early 1900s, 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. Blacks as a group were becoming wealthier, more successful, better educated, more invested and involved in American society and the American dream. And then in the 1960s, something happened. And the black community in this country has been decimated since the 60s. And what that was Lyndon Johnson's, um, the war on poverty and the social welfare programs that basically gave people money and rewarded people for not staying together and for not maintaining family units, and that destroyed the biggest loser of that from that policy is the black community in the United States. Now the liberals will say the black community is this way because it's 400 years of slavery. You can't understand what it was like 400 years of slavery. Well, that's interesting because in the 40s, while America wasn't perfect, and I'm not saying blacks had it great in the 40s. You look at Harlem, black Harlem in the 40s was very successful. What happened to that? What happened to all those entrepreneurs? Now, some people will say, like you hear about was it in Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, that they
Hmm.
burned all that down. But also, a lot of these successful black neighborhoods from the 40s. they got burned to the ground in the 60s and the 70s from riots. And in many cases, they never recovered. There's one neighborhood here in Cincinnati that apparently had a riot. I think it was twice in like a 15-year period, and like the black middle class never recovered. They lost all these businesses, all this economic activity, and they dispersed, and they never recovered. And it all started in the 60s under Lyndon Johnson.
Well,
So I
Lyndon
want to throw.
Johnson
I'll
was.
throw something in here.
Oh,
Go
only
ahead.
Go
one
ahead.
can talk at a time. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Danny. I'm the referee. Go ahead, Danny. You first because you got the higher
Oh,
volume.
we need a red light. Your turn.
Age before beauty.
Well,
Ooh.
remember, Lyndon Johnson used to brag about making these minority people dependent on the government because they'll always be voters for them. When we hand out,
The quote. Yeah, the quote was, "I'll have these N words voting Democrat for 100 years."
right, and he was
Unquote.
right.
That is the quote attributed to Lyndon Johnson.
Well, he
Lyndon
called
Johnson
it.
was a piece of Lyndon Johnson was a piece of shit. But go ahead, Kraken. You were saying.
So I like to liken it to the story of Master Chief Carl Bashir. If you've seen Men of Honor, you're familiar with the story.
Mm-hmm.
His whole attitude was, nobody's going to give it to me. I have to work harder. The fact of life is, I'm going to have to work 3 times harder than my white counterparts, but I want it that bad, so I am going to make it. And he did.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the 60s, everybody got this, that particular community got this mentality of, I'm owed this. I shouldn't
The
have to work 3 times as hard to
Well, see
get
now, you
this.
know what?
This
Now
should
hold
be
on.
given to me.
I'm going to stop you right there because, see, people try to rewrite history. Martin Luther King was not anti-American.
No.
Martin Luther King was not a communist. Now he was surrounded by communists and he talked to communists because, he's this agitator, like if you're like, if communists are like, oh, this agitator, he's hurting America, like we should support him. But Martin Luther King believed in America. He believed in capitalism. He believed in the Constitution. He believed in the Union, and he believed in what this country was about. And people have taken that and they try to make Martin Luther King into some rabble rousing BLM commie. And it's like, none of this shit's true. No one was in time. Martin Luther King, no, nothing about Martin Luther King. You cannot use Martin Luther King's name and entitlement in the same paragraph. Martin Luther King was not about that. He was a Christian preacher, and he wasn't perfect. Only Jesus was perfect, but he was about self sufficiency and family and working hard and fighting for your rights.
Mhm.
Nothing was
And,
give. Nothing was expected or free.
yeah,
You
and
know,
I put him in that same category, but then that message got hijacked and bastardized over the years.
by the communists, and this communists
Yeah,
today have they almost completely taken over the Democratic Party.
yeah. So we went
So
we went from, I shouldn't have to work 3 times as hard, but I'm going to, because my ancestors had to work 3 times as hard, I'm owed this. And I put Martin Luther King in that category before, that realized nobody's going to give it to me, so I have to work for it. If I work for it, it will eventually come out in the end and be better. Uh, but then
well,
somewhere in there, that entitlement mentality started taking hold, and that had to be fed.
it was fed, and actually, because what it does is, I made a reference to this when talking about the few people out there in California that are like the leaders of these reparation movements, because it's about power. You can try to convince people that they're entitled to have all this money, or they should have all this money, or they can get them all this money, and it's never going to happen. But if you can convince people to follow you, it's a way to amass power. Divide and conquer is not to speak in tropes, but it's a real thing. And a lot of these arguments that the left uses today, they pick these fights because they want to rewrite history to divide people to amass power, not to correct the historical wrongs from the past. And I can give a perfect example of this. Okay. So recently, like there's been all the statue stuff, tearing down the statues and all the things. You have to be honest. A lot of the stats, like the Civil War Southern statues, right? And we have to be honest. A lot of these statues, not all of them, but a lot of them were put up in the 50s in the 60s as a big fuck you to the civil rights movement. It wasn't about Robert E. Lee. It wasn't about, pride, and it wasn't about history. It was a fuck you, to make people, nervous and to insult people. That's why, like most Americans, most Southerners don't even understand that what they call the Confederate flag was never the Confederate flag. It was an Army flag that belonged to Robert E. Lee, the Army of Northern Virginia. That was never the Confederate flag. But people will take these symbols and they'll use them just like the Nazis took the swastika and they used it. That's something from like the Indian whatever culture, you know, and the so like recently they've done, they're renaming the bases, like, they want to change Fort Bragg, Fort Hood. I don't know. Have they done AP Hill? Have they done Fort? No, have they done Fort Lee and Fort AP Hill? Have they changed those as well? Do you guys know? I don't even know. Like, but
No.
they've done.
They're in the process of it. Fort Bragg is now Fort Liberty.
Yeah. Hmm.
Uh, but there's a whole list of them that are going to be changed. Fort Benning's going to be changed. Fort Lee's going to be changed. AP Hill's going to be changed.
Yeah.
That's
And like,
crazy.
yeah, and look, I think Hood was a talented commander, and I've talked about this, which is fine. Bragg was a fucking loser. AP Hill was fine. Robert E. Lee, was a career military officer. He did swear allegiance to the United States after the war, and it's like we don't have to do all this. But if you were to ask most Americans today, is it legal to fly a swastika or whatever they call the Nazi flag in Germany today?
Yes,
The
freedom of
answer
speech.
No, 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 no. They don't have freedom of the freedom of speech is only in America. Constitution is only in America. The answer is no. The answer is no. Okay, like possession and doing things like I don't know this for certain, but I would be fairly sure that you could not take on a radio station in Germany, you couldn't pick out a copy of Adolf Hitler's book Mein Kampf and start reading it on the air and not get arrested.
My struggle.
Okay.
Mein
Well,
Kampf.
yeah, I know, I
My
know, I know,
struggle.
I know, I know, but it's Mein Kampf. So, his bullshit book. But you can't. Germany has all these rules because you know, they're a liberal democracy, but they're like, we have this special situation with the Nazis and all this and whatever, and the way the world looks at us and two world wars, and everyone goes, yeah, 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 right? We get all this. It's like, they're enlightened, like they're more modern than we are here in the United States. Like that's why it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to have Fort Hood and Fort whatever, right? Because this is the way it is. Like Germany, you can actually be arrested if you're caught with certain symbols in Germany. This is the truth.
Well,
Most American. Well, hold on. I'm going.
go
This is
ahead.
the punchline.
Excuse me.
Most we want to rename all these bases, but in Germany, where you're not allowed to, you know, have any not display any Nazi shit, okay, you can get arrested. There is a training center that it was a training center in. It belonged to. It's a barracks and a training center. It's in Augustdorf, Germany, and it was a training center. I think when the Nazis were in control of Germany, and I think it was a training center possibly when the Weimar Republic and pre-Nazis controlled Germany, but they do armor training there now. That base today in Germany, where it is illegal to read Mein Kampf and illegal to flash these Nazi symbols, is the Field Marshal Rommel Barracks and Training Center.
I didn't know
Why
that.
is that? Yeah, because they don't want to talk about it. Yeah, and it's not because no one's going to sit here and say, well, it's because the fucking Nazis are like fucking this. They won that one. It's like, no, it's because Rommel was considered one of the founding fathers of modern armored warfare.
Right. He was a great tactician.
Like, okay, and like, hold on. It's like, well, Rommel's not whatever. It's like, well, wait a minute, hold on. True, Heinz Guderian was also a very talented German tank commander, tactician who came up with STIP. And he was a crazy fucking Nazi, and not going to name shit after him. You know what I mean? It's like, there's a scale here of like what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so what we teach people is just as important as to what we don't teach people. Crimes of omission, lies of omission. Like if like Fort Bragg, Fort Bragg, General Bragg was a fucking loser. Like General Bragg just sucked. There's no reason to have a base named after that asshole. But you know what? The fucking Southerners decided that we need they had to pick their one famous general, and so they were like, we have a general, he's a fucking Bragg. We're gonna name the base Bragg. It's like fucking whatever. It's like fucking stupid, but okay. I'd leave it because it is what it is. But if they want to change it, they can change it. But I'm just saying a lot of this is just it's a power play to fuck with people. It's not based in actual, enlightened thought. It's about it's the gotcha game for power.
Well, another thing too, they're trying to, a lot of these liberals or whoever you want to call them, they're trying to erase and rewrite history to their benefit. They would, to where they, how they would want it. And when you start erasing all history, be it good or bad, it, it's exactly like you say, it's about their power of controlling. You
Oh
can't.
yeah, if you destroy the origin story and the common culture of a country, then you can change the country.
All right. The dumbest thing I ever seen is when they were tearing down statues, especially here in the Chicago area. They literally tipped over and tore down the statue of Christopher Columbus on Columbus Drive. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why?
Well,
I mean,
because well, no, well, it's because when we were kids, Christopher Columbus was a hero. But what's happened is the commies today look at Christopher Columbus as a genocidal maniac.
unbelievable.
Yeah, no, seriously. They're like, Christopher Columbus is responsible for the death of millions of first peoples, Native Americans, Indians, and so, it's like, but okay, this is like the Aunt Jemima thing. Okay, they got rid of Aunt Jemima, but Aunt Jemima wasn't put on the bottles of the syrup as like a minstrel, like as an insult, like the is like the black, like the what's the little yard lanterns, blackface with the red things that some people would put in their yards back in the
Lawn
50s, 60s.
jockeys.
Lawn jockeys, yeah. It wasn't as a lawn jockey, it was she was a beloved character, a beloved figure, culturally appreciated across all races. Okay. And today, the commies decided Aunt Jemima, because they found it embarrassing, or they decided it was a low hanging fruit. Aunt Jemima died a wealthy woman. They paid her a lot of money, and she went around the country and met a lot of people, and people loved to know her. She was a celebrity, and she was rich, and they're but it's like you can say, well, that this was wrong and she was wrong and everything she did was wrong. It's like, no, that's not true. No, everyone loved her. Like she belonged to everybody. And they do that. They've done that with Columbus. But the thing is, Christopher Columbus is not an American. Amerigo Vespucci, I think, was one of the explorers. That's a theory that maybe America's named after him. But Christopher Columbus was not an American. Christopher Columbus wasn't actually venerated in this country to a great deal because he was never an American. The reason Christopher Columbus started getting statues and Christopher Columbus Day and all this other stuff was because at the time there was another minority that had immigrated to this country that was a large minority, and they were discriminated against. They were not thought well of. Some of the prejudices still exist against them today. They were called wops and greasers and whatever things you come for Italian, and they moved to have their hero, an Italian, because Christopher Columbus is actually Italian. He sailed for Spain, but he was actually Italian, and so they made the statues and the days for him because it was the Italians were the minority du jour that had the political power, and they wanted the juice. And now we have another. Now the commies are coming through and ripping those statues down, claiming somehow he's a genocidal maniac. It's proof America sucks. And it's like, well, Christopher Columbus was an American. We put his ass up to make the fucking Italians happy in the fucking in the early 1900s.
Yep.
But nobody wants to teach that history.
No, well, that's my
in the
point.
early
They're trying to erase it.
In the early 1900s, the people of the early 1900s today. Speaking of the Harvard, the Harvard case, with the affirmative action, people in the early 1900s would be shocked. They would be shocked if you told Italians in 1910, if you took an Italian and a Jew walking down the street in New York City and said, "You're white," they would have been like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Society would have been like, "Oh yeah, the Jews and Italians are white." And it's like, they'd have been like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Nobody thought these people were white in 1900. Today they're white. It's interesting. You start getting into this thing where you're literally into the same shit with the Nazis. You're seeing the shit with the South, like one drop of blood and like 1/16 this color or that color, and then you're into the whole, like, are you white? And like, black people, like, you're passing because they're not black enough. And it's like, you know what? Michael Jackson got success in this country because the motherfucker could sing and dance. Beyonce getting success in this country because she could sing and dance. And Taylor Swift is getting success in this country because she can sing and dance. And has nothing to do with what their race is, or whether they're all the white or half white or Italian or Jewish or black or half black. And it's like, this is what commies do. This is what people that want it. This is the the postmodern deconstruction communist theory of everything. And I'm glad to see the Supreme Court knock a lot of this shit back.
So am I. So am I. Hey, I have an interesting story for you that I read on the wires the other day.
Yeah.
Okay, coming out of your favorite state, California.
Uh-huh.
In California, I believe it was a suburb of Frisco. The certain parents went to the school board and they said, I'm not making this up. Excuse me. They said that their children identify as cats, felines. So the school board put in place in bathrooms kitty litter boxes for them.
You gotta be shitting me.
No. They're called furries. FURRY''S. So now certain schools out in California have kitty litter boxes in the bathrooms. Top that with your police blotter.
Well, I mean, Kraken is. I mean, are there furries in Nebraska?
You know, I've heard of it in a few other places. I like to think we have a little more common sense than that in Nebraska, but in Lincoln anyway, it wouldn't surprise me. But I've heard of this in other places too. And recently, here's the one that gets me. So recently, Michigan passed a law that makes it a felony to get somebody's pronouns incorrect by their
I
preference.
heard about that.
Well, I'd be doing life for all the felonies I'd have against me. I am not a pronoun proper person.
Well, it's interesting because I'm supposed to respect their pronouns, but they won't respect my pronouns.
Oh, of course. It's cool. I shouldn't laugh, but one of the biggest gay pride parades is in Chicago, and they had it. I mean, they had a huge big doing last weekend and all the other stuff. Well,
giant dildos on floats going down.
I tell you, there were so many scissor sisters. It was unbelievable. But Marky, I know you get that.
Yeah.
If I've never seen so many purple, pink, hair-colored people with tutus in my life. It was unbelievable. It was crazy. It was crazy. It was entertaining, but crazy.
And just I mean, well, I'll tell you what. Speaking of purple hair colored people, so the Alec Baldwin shooting on the movie set, and I don't know if you guys have heard or if I even had a chance to talk about it. The gun that was used to shoot, I think, Elena Hutchinson by Alec Baldwin, that gun was destroyed. It's like, oh, really? Like, how convenient was that? Like, was the IRS involved in this? So, and so, like, this is like, Alec Baldwin, is responsible. He says he never pulled the trigger, but, the gun was ended up being destroyed. So, it's criminally, he's not going to be prosecuted, but civilly, he's going to, he's going to still have to fight it. Well, it came out recently that the woman who's the armorer for that movie, like, I remember seeing her, and she looks, I mean, like, look, I'm not trying to speak in, stereotypes, but, like, an armorer, I don't know what I expected an armorer on a movie set to look like, but I figured, I don't know, middle-aged guy, maybe got a little bit of a paunch, I don't know, been around guns his whole life, maybe has some some resume of use, but really as the enthusiast and all the like whatever it was. Well, they showed the armorer that was on this set where this accident happened, and she literally looks like she could be at a gay pride parade, on parade day with blue hair and piercings and crazy fucking makeup, and you're just like, what the fuck am I looking at here? And
And
it's
probably
like,
could.
well, and and turns out she was the daughter of a famous Hollywood gun prop guy, and so it's like she's a legacy like Harvard. It's like we're just gonna let her ass sing. Sure, fucking yeah. She didn't earn it. She's daddy's girl, and it's come out that on the movie set, you look at her, and yeah, if I saw her walking down the street, I mean, I wouldn't dislike her, but she's not a person I'd be like, I'd hand a gun to and be like, hey, you want to go shooting? Because she looks like an irresponsible, fucked up person. Well, it turns out she's been accused of smoking pot every day on set, drinking at night, And apparently they had live ammo on the set they were shooting. And apparently, the day she was being interviewed by the cops, for the shooting, the police are now saying that she was carrying cocaine and handed it off to somebody else so the cops wouldn't find the cocaine on her. And it's like, this is the armorer. And I hate to say this because it's going to come as a shock. Me saying AOC was right about her comments. She just didn't realize it. She's broken clock is right, right at least once a day. Um, Alec Baldwin coming out and being like, this isn't my fault. And the more it comes out about this stupid movie, about, the way this movie was being run, I hate to say this, but Alec Baldwin's got a point because as someone who's run ranges with multiple people running around and different guns and all this shit, it is so hard to keep track of shit and shit can go sideways quick. That's why a lot of stuff, if it's real basic, it's got to be structured like you're 5 years old. Everybody line up. Don't keep your gun holstered in, you walk up to the line, unholster your gun. Under no circumstances should you unholster a gun unless you're on the line because you can't keep track of 5 or 10 guns and all this ammo and all these people and all this shit going on. And it turns out the girl that was supposed to do all this was on cocaine, smoking pot, and alcohol, and she looks like a crazy person. And it's like, oh, but gee, somebody got shot. Is that Alec Baldwin's fault? I'm sorry, but it's probably not.
It sounds like the makeup of the people that designed that sub that went down to the Titanic. Did you see that they didn't hire the best people to design that sub? He hired people that would be more inclusive. He didn't want to have the best engineers. They hired people that would fit more into the I can't say liberal. I can't think of the word. The whole scheme of this new type thing. Did
Well,
you
you
read
know
that?
what? I heard it, but the thing is, what the marketing material says, because people do that all the time. I want to inspire the younger generation. I want to show, like we do this all the time in the gun community. We're like, um, I want to show people that the gun store isn't just these old curmudgeonly white guys in the gun store that are mean to people or they're whatever to outside groups. It's like we're young and we're hip and we're this and we're that, or we can we do this all the time. So I'm not prepared to take marketing material or a throwaway line somebody made to a media outlet and and say that's the standard that they actually technically ran things. I don't know if that's true. That just seems a little bit too convenient for my side of the political spectrum.
They had a game controller to direct the sub. What do you call that?
Of course they did. That's common sense. Do you know why they had a game controller to direct the sub?
No, I don't.
It's real simple. It's obvious to me. It's because it's a wireless game controller. You know that, right? It's wireless. They're like, well, can you plug it in? They're like, no, we keep extras. It's a wireless game controller. Why
Right.
would they use a wireless game controller to control the submarine's motors outside the submarine?
Don't know, but somebody didn't check the batteries.
Because nobody wants to, they don't know how to drill a hole to run a wire to the motors and have it not leak at 12,000 feet under the ocean. That's
Nope.
how they solve that problem. That's the only way they could solve that problem. They had to use wireless. That's what they did. It was so obvious to me why it was wireless because it's scary to be like fucking wireless. Then you start thinking about it. They didn't know how to they don't know how to penetrate the pressure hull for control surfaces. The U.S. Navy's figured this out, but they can't. That's why they did it.
I also
They
heard
didn't.
that the go
They
ahead.
did not. They did not use wireless game controllers so they could somehow get little Johnny, the Gen Xer, to pay attention to them. Because I got news for you: the Army uses those same game controllers to control Bushmaster guns on in armored vehicles in Iraq. Did you know that?
No,
They're
I did
just
not.
they're wired, but yep, and they're like doop 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 doop. The kids are like, oh, this is fucking great. They take to it like a fish to water. So it's just because something it's like, oh, this is too good to check. It's like it's just so good for my side of the argument. It's like, no, there's got to be a technical reason here why they would do this. And it's been designed, been engineered. It's got all the functions you want on it, and it's wireless. You don't have to drill a hole in the pressure hull. That's what that's about.
Anytime a narrative fits too perfectly, there's probably some bullshit involved.
There's always bullshit involved.
And on that
Always
game
bullshit
controller,
involved.
they can be modified. But one thing we have to remember, that game controller probably has more computing power than your laptop 10 years ago does.
No, good point.
You know what? As a computer science person from
You're going to throw the
major,
bullshit flag on
that
one?
would throw the bullshit flag out. There's not that much of the game controller. There's not. No, it's not a laptop 10 years ago. Dude, a laptop 10 years ago, you could run. I mean, like you could a laptop 10 years ago. If as long as you didn't get taken out in this first strike, you could run a full nuclear war with, to fight the Russians. Like
Well,
I
there's a lot
stand
of juice.
corrected. I bow
Yeah,
before the expert.
yeah.
I'm still on my Commodore 64, and I don't have any problems with it.
Yeah,
You still playing Trails End
Commodore
every night?
64. Bitch, how about a Radio Shack TRS 80?
Trash 80.
Oh, I got a better Mr. Commodore 64. What about the Commodore VIC 20?
Oh, I
Yeah,
remember
it's
that.
predates the 64. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got you. B. If we're gonna play the Beat You game, I played Pong.
Yeah,
So
I
did
played
I.
Pong. Yeah, we
On
all
a
played
black and
Pong.
white. Wait, on a black and white
Before
TV.
it was cool.
Oh, before it was cool.
When it was
Okay.
cutting edge, I played
Yeah,
Pong.
when Kraken played Pong, they cut it was he did it with wood blocks. they,
Well,
they
all
took two
right.
by fours and they cut them, and then they had
It looks like I'm going to have to beat all you people. I remember in the very early 60s when the first color TVs came out, they needed a crane to move them.
Ooh, you got me. You got
Yeah, I
me.
think you got me beat there.
I remember seeing
You're so
black and white
old. When you was a
TVs.
kid, you ate dirt.
Yeah.
I remember I'm walking down the street, and people's curtains were open, and I seen this. I seen the what the hell was that? Sure enough, it was a color TV in their front room.
Peeking in on old
I
Mrs.
believe it was
Johnson, you perv.
1963.
Yeah,
Creeper.
yeah, yeah. There's a mugshot from you in 1963. Peeping Tom, peeping Danny. No, I was watching the TV,
No,
watching the Lawrence Welk show.
people used to leave their front room curtains open and let the sunshine in because we didn't have a lot of air conditioning.
Yeah, you know what people did? People left those front curtains open to show off to the neighbors they had a TV. That's
Maybe that's what it was. They were showing off.
yeah.
No, that's probably what it was. You're probably correct. You're
Yep.
probably correct.
Danny's walking around looking in windows at color TVs, and the roofs all had sod on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. But no, I remember seeing one of the first color TVs, and it was so big it took like a whole wall in the living room. They were huge, huge. I bet you they weighed 400 pounds.
I mean, I remember like when TVs they were like consoles, like they were big. Like
Yep.
my grandmother, like that, like all the TVs were like, I mean, but there was shit on either side. I'm like every TV was probably 10 feet long, 8 feet long.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they
Maybe
were
a TV
huge.
in the center. Yeah, I remember all that. Like
Yep. Damn near big enough you could put all the Christmas food on top of it, and that's where the
they had
buffet
back.
was.
Oh,
Oh
they had
yeah.
back. Yeah, yeah, and they had vacuum tubes. It was all vacuum tubes. Like you don't know what a vacuum tube is
Yep.
today. So it is what it is. So, well, we've been going for a while, and I think this is a success. And so, Kraken, are you still there?
Yep.
Okay, I think we lost some. I don't know. Danny, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. You hear me?
Okay, I heard something drop. I don't know if someone dropped a microphone. So I have got a police blotter. We're going to go ahead and we're going to call this one. So this is coming out of Florida. Give me a second here. Here we go. New York Post, June 27th, 2023. Florida man fires 30 AR-15 rounds at pool cleaner he thought was intruder and avoids charges. Have you heard about this?
No.
No, I haven't.
This is fucking crazy. And this is an example of, if you have a gun, one of the rules if you carry a gun or you're having a gun for self-defense is don't shoot people that don't need to be shot. Just because you are, quote, in fear doesn't justify you shooting people, okay? You got to shoot them when they're doing something. So what happened was Bradley Hokevar, 57, of Dundalin, and his wife Jana were grabbing food from their kitchen around 9 p.m. on June 15th when they heard noises coming from their pool lanai, the Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Gutierrez said. The couple alleged that they saw a man they did not recognize standing in their screened-in yard and moving closer to their door. Hokevar yelled at the person to, quote, go away multiple times before grabbing his Colt M4 carbine while Jana called 911. Let's see here. Skip there talking about the gun, blah, 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 blah. The Hoover's pool cleaner was mistaken for an intruder. Janice's emergency phone call and surveillance footage captured the chaotic moments that followed as Hokevar got behind a couch and fired 2 rounds through closed blinds into the backyard. So he fired 2 rounds through these blinds. This guy can't see him. Okay. And then he emptied the magazine of his rifle into the backyard, firing a total of 30 rounds in 90 seconds. Police later found stray bullets on a shuffleboard court behind the Hoover's property. The mysterious man was later identified as the couple's pool cleaner, 33-year-old Carl Pollock. Carl, 33, was hit in the back with glass and shrapnel, but he didn't take any rounds. Pollock, who was employed by the Bay Area pool cleaners, told police he arrived at the house late because he was running behind schedule. Pollock did not knock on the door. He didn't call or make any attempt to notify the Hoskevars that he would be entering their back lanai and going on to their pool deck at 9 p.m. Pollock was hit in the back with glass and shrapnel, but he wasn't per se shot, as a quote from the sheriffs. He managed to run off the lanai after Hokevar's 2 initial rounds and was not in the backyard when the homeowner emptied the rifle. Pollock was later treated at the hospital for minor injuries and was released just a few hours later. Gutierrez, the sheriff, confirmed on Monday that Hokevar will not face charges because he acted within the bounds of Florida's Stand Your Ground law, which protects homeowners' rights to fire someone he believes to be a threat. Quote, this is one of those things, if I was going to sum it up, it's a terrible set of circumstances, but it's unfortunate, unavoidable, but it's probably one of those things that I would call lawful but awful. The incident was ruled legal under Florida's Stand Your Ground law, and they're just repeating themselves. So this is an example of gun people that are going to get our gun rights taken away. Stand Your Ground law is a big deal. Like it's so important that we have that in this country, and we have it because in England there are people that defend themselves in their homes from criminals are being sent to jail, and it's just like it's just ridiculous. So, the stand your ground idea is just it's a really good thing. But this person just torching off 30 rounds just because you can shoot somebody doesn't mean you should.
Wow.
Yeah. I think we may have lost Kraken. So, well, this wraps
Nope,
up.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Well, this wraps up episode 308 of the John 1911 podcast. If you want to see any more stories or pictures or links of anything we discussed, please go to the website at john1911.com. That's JOHN1911.com. Remember, it's all about shooting guns and having fun and not shooting your pool boy. Everybody, have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.